Welcome to Talk Travel with Heather Tate, North Mississippi's podcast for savvy travelers. Talk Travel with Heather Tate is a weekly podcast that airs every Monday on the Shark 102.3 FM radio station based in Ripley, Mississippi, and is then released as a podcast. Travel advisor and travel enthusiast Heather Tate of Whimsical Destinations gives listeners expert travel tips curated through the years of personal and professional experience. By clicking subscribe, you'll have a new travel tip to add to your collection delivered to your podcast library every Monday. Talk Travel with Heather Tate is brought to you by Sun Bear Studio. Sun Bear Studio is a boutique recording studio in the heart of Ripley, Mississippi. When you record with us at Sun Bear Studio, we can mix, master, register, and publish your music, your podcast, or your family story. Email us when you're ready at sunbear@jc.media.
This program was recorded at Sun Bear Studio in Ripley, Mississippi.
Good morning, Northeast Mississippi travelers. This is Heather with Talk Travel with Heather Tate, and I am so excited to share my adventures and tried and true tips with you, whether you are also a seasoned traveler, a hopeful traveler, or currently an armchair traveler, meaning you're going to follow along with us from home for now. This is our 121st episode of Talk Travel with Heather Tate. And last week, I talked to you all about our girls' trip to Jamaica that's coming up next July. So if you did not listen to that episode, you want to rewind and tune back to that so you can find out how you can join us. This week, we're going to shift gears a little bit, and it's going to be entitled One Night Only. And what this episode's going to be about is the story of how Logan and I decided where we were going and when we were going to take a one-night couples trip, just the two of us, and it was a spur of the moment. So what's going to be fun is this week I'm going to tell you about all the places we thought about but didn't go, because I thought, you know what? Someone else could really use that information to inspire them for their one-night trip when you only have one night. And then next week I'm going to share with you where we actually ended up going. Okay, so a couple of weeks ago, Logan and I decided we needed a weekend away. And we started very ambitiously. First, we thought, okay, if we had 3 nights, where would we go? Well, if we have 3 nights, Logan and I are going to the Caribbean. That's what we're going to do in January when we have a 3-night weekend. We are going to Jamaica. So we realized, okay, 3 nights is just not going to work. It was the weekend after Halloween. And if your October was anything like our October, it was really busy. It also got a little stressful towards the end. So at this point, we thought we made it a whole month. Logan was in Dancing with the King, and so we could not go anywhere leading up to that because he had a lot of dance rehearsals and practices, and we did not want to miss any of those. So I told him, I was like, we're going to have a no-travel October for the whole month. And that's unusual for us. Usually we go somewhere at least a night every month, but October is my favorite month to travel because it's the fall, and I love going to different fall destinations. But I thought we'll stay home the whole month. But by November 1st, which was the Friday after Halloween, I was like, I am ready to get out of the state and just explore and go somewhere. Like I was itching to go somewhere. So Logan thought, okay, well, we don't have 3 nights. We don't have anything going on next weekend. We were wrong. We had a lot going on the next weekend. We had just forgotten about it. You have like temporary amnesia. And so we had our youngest, Christian, had his first basketball game, which fortunately the grandparents stepped in and took him to that. And so everything worked out fine. Our boys had play practice that Friday night because they were going to have a play. They were in Cinderella the following week. So I had book club that Sunday, which then I quickly realized what was going to be a 3-night trip where we were going to go to the Caribbean turned into a 2-night trip. And so then I thought, in 2 nights, we could go to New York. And Logan and I have been talking about returning to New York, going just for the weekend. I've easily done it as a 2-night trip before. The problem was I needed to be back by lunchtime on Sunday because I had book club. And book club was one of my favorite days of the month, and I couldn't miss it. I could not miss my book club, and I'm glad I didn't because it ended up being one of our best book clubs of the year. We had a great group, but that's besides the point. I couldn't even go for 2 nights because I would have missed book club. When we looked into coming back, whether it's Memphis or Birmingham, when we would arrive back, it was all going to be after book club. So I'm like, okay, so Logan, we have 1 night. So for 1 night only, where can we go and what can we do? Now, here's some ideas. And some of these are places we've been before, things we've done before. So we were going through them. The Shack Up Inn in the Delta is a great 1-night getaway. There's a lot of wonderful restaurants in Clarksdale, Ground Zero, which is a club that is partially owned or co-owned by Morgan Freeman. There's a place called Hooker's Grocery that has phenomenal food. When we went the last time, we even said like it tasted as good as restaurants we've eaten at in New York City. So we thought, well, that'll make a great option. And it was one of our backups. But then we thought, okay, well, maybe somewhere else. And we have stayed in Airbnbs and bed and breakfast in New Albany, Columbus, Oxford, amazing tree house that we love to go to in Tishomingo. So we had lots of places we're thinking close by where we could easily do a one-night trip. And if you haven't done any of those, look into that, because sometimes all you have is one night. You have one night. If your parents, it's going to oftentimes be that one night. You've got the grandparents on board. They're going to be able to watch the kids, or maybe the kids are all spending the night with friends. And so you're like, we've got a night. Where can we go? I mean, we could have done a staycation and enjoyed ourselves at home, or gone to Tupelo. You know, Hotel Tupelo is a great place for a one-night getaway. And sometimes going in your own hometown, your own home city, and being tourist. I have a whole podcast episode about that, is what you want to do, because you're able to see your city through fresh eyes, through the eyes of a tourist, and see some things and do some things that you normally wouldn't do. It is not uncommon at all to not go to those popular places in your own hometown just because you're like, everyone who's traveling goes there. I'm going to skip that. Well, then our thought was, we can fly on Contour out of Tupelo. And now we have two options. First, we only had Nashville, so we could easily do a one-night trip in Nashville, and that is a really popular and great option if you have one night only. We even thought about driving to Nashville, but first we thought about our flight options, and again, we were doing this 1 week ahead of time. That's not the best idea. You really want to give yourself more time. But to show you what amazing thing we could come up with in one night, that's why I'm giving you some of these options that would have worked. So we couldn't go to Nashville because there were no flights on the return coming back. Also, a lot were booked up already for that Friday because it was a week ahead of time. So then we thought Dallas. As of October 1st, Tupelo now flies daily on Contour to and from Dallas, Texas. We thought, this is it. This will make a fantastic one-night getaway. And alas, those seats were already filled. So if you want to go to Dallas, like we do, you need to book that more than a week ahead of time, especially if you're wanting to go on the weekend. So keep that in mind. Then there's some other places that have been on my list that I haven't been before. One of them being the Bolt Tree Farmhouse outside of Chattanooga, which is an amazingly beautiful place, perched on top of the mountains, very romantic, all two-person rooms. Some are domes, some are mirror cabins, some are tree houses, all with like outdoor showers and really beautiful hot tubs overlooking the mountains. I thought this would be a great option, but then you have to remember, not all places allow you to go for just one night. Some on the weekends especially have a 2 or 3 night minimum, and that's what we found for this location. So it had to be on the list for another day. Last year, we did a his and her weekend. If you remember, I have an episode about that. And that is where we went to Lynchburg, Tennessee. We actually stayed in a cottage that was on a farm where Jack Daniels had lived for a while. And we stayed it was a lavender farm now, and it was a little cottage. It included breakfast. There were farm animals that were all around. There were trails where you could walk. And we were really close to the Jack Daniels distillery where we could go the next day, and we did a tour. And Huntsville, Alabama is one of our favorite spots for a one-night getaway. So we thought, well, we could go somewhere in Huntsville. We looked at Lake Guntersville, has some beautiful new cabins. So all of these are great ideas for a one-night getaway. And then I thought, I'm just going to look. I'm just going to search on Airbnb to see if there's any one-night locations where we could go. Coleman, Alabama popped up. And I will say that is going to lead me to a future trip, an adventure and podcast episode, because we are going to Christmas in Coleman in December. It starts November 21st, goes through December 23rd, and it is an old-fashioned German-themed Christmas market like you see in Europe, the European Christmas markets. We went last year just for a day trip. And I decided this year would be great to turn that into an overnight trip. Found a beautiful little cabin, but here's the problem. It could sleep 4. And I started thinking, if I can go somewhere that can sleep 4, my boys can go with me. I'm going to feel bad if I go somewhere they could go. And I like this one, so I'm going to save this for a future trip where they're going with us, and it's a family trip. So we're going to do that in December. The same thing happened for Mentone, Alabama. Mentone, Alabama, Fort Payne, Alabama, that area. DeSoto Falls has been on my wish list to go to. Found a beautiful cabin, super excited, almost booked it, was available for one night. Same thing. It could sleep 4. So I thought, I'll save that for a family trip. I should go somewhere where it only accommodates 2 people. That's going to be romantic. It's going to be somewhere then that Logan and I can go, and I won't feel bad that the kids missed out on this trip because we needed a getaway. And I found a winery in Kenton, Tennessee. So it's about 15 miles south of Union City. So really close to the Kentucky-Missouri border. It is the most western part of Tennessee, northwestern part of Tennessee. And I found this winery loft where you had the entire loft to yourselves. And it's called White Squirrel Winery. And that is all the time we have for this week's episode. If you would like to tune in and hear about White Squirrel Winery, that will be for next week. Wherever you go, whatever you do this week, have an amazing adventure. Remember, life is short. Make those memories. Take the trip. You won't regret it.
This show is made possible by JC Media, LLC in Ripley, Mississippi. JC Media owns the Shark 102.3 Classic Rock FM radio station where the show is hosted, and Sun Bear Recording Studio where the interviews are recorded. We need your feedback and support. If you listen to the podcast on a player like iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Amazon Music, please subscribe to the show and leave us a review. We also have an email in which you can share your feedback. That email is theshark1023@gmail.com. Subscribe to our podcast on your favorite app or stream episodes online at shark1023.com/podcasts. Today's episode was produced by Melinda Marsalis. It was edited by Rick Williams and engineered by Chris Marsalis. The podcast technician is Joyce Grady.